Yeah, so and also kind of as a like transition to the new chapter. So we just like we went through the like the cost flow in chapter 3, the job order costing. And in job order costing, we still use the traditional costing system on which we focus on one type of cost driver for the overhead, the indirect manufacture cost. Because traditionally, in the early stage of the production, most of the overhead, like the depreciation of the machineries, utility cost, supervisor's salary, they assume they are mostly triggered by the direct labor hours, which is really the case because in the beginning we don't have lots of machineries. Most of the products are made by manual labors, right? Direct labor is an important cost driver for the overhead cost. Then later, when they introduced lots of automation machineries, the machine hour become another popular cost driver they used to accumulate and allocate the overhead. So direct labor hour or machine hours. So that's the common two cost drivers we introduce the cost accounting system. But in reality these days, the production process or even the service companies, the production or the service generation become more complex. There are much more cost drivers can trigger the overhead or indirect cost. So more than the direct labor hour or machine hours. For example, that's why we bring in chapter 5, the activity-based costing, which is more popular, or you can see the application in real manufacture or service industries. Because if you still use the traditional one or like the company-wide cost driver or departmental, the result is even you finish calculation of the cost reports, the data is not useful, or it wouldn't give you really the accurate information for the costing of the products or service. So you can finish, right? You can give the number. For example, I'm saying all of my like the laptops I made. Okay, this is the cost for this model, and this is the cost for the other model, or the cell phones, or the clothing, or the food, or even services. You can finish, but the data is not useful. And the managers, they wouldn't trust, okay, they wouldn't really use the data for their decision making because they know you don't have a trustable or reliable accounting system to reflect the real activities in the production or service. So it's challenging the accounting function to rethink and reform the cost accounting system. So that's why we introduced chapter 5, and that's the activity-based costing. So activity-based costing, we are breaking the silos, or we are breaking the boundaries between the process or departments. We are not only looking for the overhead for this department or that department, then you allocate them separately. You are looking for the overall value added activities, looking all the way from the beginning, like so the whole value chain. Right, you are looking the value chain rather than departments. So what are the activities generate value to my company, all the way from the purchasing, production, sales, and delivery, and finally services. Okay. So you are looking the overall the activities on the value added or non-value added, rather than looking for, oh, this is my department and your department, we have no interaction with each other. So you are not really looking for the traditional organizational charts, right? You are looking for the overall value chain flow. So in that case, I'm saying that there probably wouldn't really change your direct material and the direct labor because those still the identifiable cost. But for the indirect overhead or indirect cost, you are really breaking down them, okay, for like grouping them into different types of cost and identify the most appropriate cost drivers for each cost pool. So activity-based costing. So you are looking for the cost and the reasonable drivers behind them rather than, okay, you need like for the whole company, I'm using direct labor or machine hours. Okay, yeah, that can be for some of the overhead, but not for all of them. Okay, so we are using many more cost drivers in the ABC system, and the goal is increase the relevance and accuracy for the cost data generated from the system. So it's really reflecting the true inputs for the different products and services. Okay, trying to correct the problem of the traditional costing in the modern production or service. So that's why I gave the first project a ABC application in the healthcare industries. Okay, because when we're only looking for the general, but looking the article for me, I think is very interesting for me. So think about like a healthcare like industry, like hospitals, okay, clinics, how the traditional accounting system couldn't be, really is actually misleading the data and also the decision making. Pricing. So pricing of the healthcare service wouldn't really be linked to the true cost of each patient or the services. So it's really distorted between the cost and the price and even your insurance charge, okay, or insurance claim. So they are trying to use the ABC to save the costing system for the healthcare so we can generate meaningful, useful, and accurate real-time data, okay, to assist the management. So I will leave you to read and check out articles and work on chapter 5. But again, if you have individual questions regarding the project and the clinic, okay, you are trying to pick, so you can please email me, okay, by your team leader, that I want to you have a team leader, okay, so that make the communication easier, okay. But we'll see, okay, we'll see when you started. So, we can address more questions related to that. So that's kind of wrap up for I normally call first the learning module, okay, like the cost concepts and the cost reports. Okay, so we use the job order costing or process costing or even the ABC costing. The purpose we have the different types of costing system is to generate useful, accurate, relevant data for managers for their decision making. Okay, certainly the reports will help us understand the past transactions, but more we can use those data for predicting the future. Okay, like the chapter 6 and 7, we talk about the cost of volume profit analysis and then special decision makings like make or buy choices, outsourcing decisions, and special decisions. Then we move to departmental segment performance, and then finally we'll wrap up the budgeting system. Okay, that's kind of we are moving to chapter 6 and 7. We are kind of a group. And chapter 6 is not really hard, or it's kind of a transition from, you remember in chapter 2, when we introduced the different cost concepts, there is one way we separate the cost based upon the cost behavior, right? So we separate the cost we group them by different criteria or like different perspectives. There is a cost behavior. We separate the cost into variable cost, fixed cost, and even mixed cost. Oh, and the cost behavior means when the underlying volume, like sales volume or production volume change, how the cost will react, which cost will increase according to the volume change, which cost will change, but not really in proportion. Okay, and probably some cost will stay the same no matter you change the volume, which is a fixed cost. So we'll dig more on the different cost behavior in chapter 6, but with a focus on breaking down the mixed cost into variable and fixed, so we can get ready to perform chapter 7 okay later. So more deep understanding and the discussion of the cost behavior and the techniques to separate or breaking down the fixed cost of using the different math or statistical tools. And the reason is why we want to analyze the cost from the variable and the fixed perspective. And the variable portion and the fixed portion of the cost determines a company's cost structure. Okay, be careful. When they refer to the cost structure of a company, you are not talking about a manufacturer cost or non-manufacturer cost. You are referring to how much of your total cost is variable and how much is fixed. Because the relative portion of your variable and fixed cost will affect the operational dynamics. We like the for example, how sensitive the profit will change when you have increase or decrease of sales revenues. So how profit will be sensitive to change of revenues. For some industries, when there is a small change of your revenue, the profit will change a lot. It's like leverage, or it's like we know the leverage, right? So you put a small first on one side, but the other side will be moved a lot. And that company will normally happen when a company have lots of fixed cost. We'll talk about this cost structure more and operating leverage in chapter 7, but this is just to give you some idea. Okay, so what we want to really understand better or deeply for the cost structure. Okay, how the managerial implications for us to understand the cost structure. Okay, how we can apply in a real business analysis and decision making. Okay. So if you are a company having lots of fixed costs, such as the energy industries, oil and gas companies, and also the airline companies, right? They have aircraft, right? They're providing services. So if you have lots of fixed cost, and in this type of companies, the profit will be very sensitive to the change of your revenue. Or if your revenue increase or decrease a small portion, and the profit can change a lot, maybe 10 times of the change of your revenue. Okay, we'll learn the reasons later, but that's like kind of okay. And but on the other side, if my company I have mostly variable cost, for example, I'm a consulting company, right? Accounting firms, attorney firms, my most of my cost may be related to the labor, okay, variable labors. Or a technology firm, okay, I'm just thinking, okay, they have more variable expenses. then in this type of companies, their profit is less sensitive to the revenue change. So means when the revenue go up or goes down, even like a lot, their profits will not change that much. So imagine these companies will easy to survive in when I say when the economy, like in the COVID-19, right? So 2 or 3 years, the hardship. The companies with more variable cost easily to survive than companies with mostly fixed cost, because their profits is much less sensitive to the sales change, right? So when the sales decrease a lot because of the COVID-19, right? Because of the dramatic decrease of customer sales. So companies with more variable cost easily survive than companies with many fixed cost. That's kind of determined by their cost structure. Okay, later when we introduce the contribution margin concept in chapter 7, you see the contribution margin income statement, you will understand better. Okay, but that does matters. Also, another use of the variable cost and fixed cost is helping us understand the economy of scale concept. Is like the average, right? So the scale of the company. So given you can sell the products, so the larger of your sales volume and the smaller will be your average cost of the product. So you get more advantage of the pricing and average cost will increase the volume of the scale of your productions, right? We talk about this briefly in chapter 2. And this is pretty much because the fixed cost behavior. If I quickly draw this. Oh, I couldn't. So let me merge this. So if you can recall, when we talk about the cost behavior in chapter 2, so I'm using so this again, okay, the chart is easier than the words to understand, because the variable cost per unit is a fixed number. For example, I'm talking about the anything. I'm just looking around. Oh, like a coffee cup, right? So for example, my like the variable cost of my coffee cup, right? So coffee cup or any like water cup is $10. This includes my direct material and direct labor, because those are always variable costs, and some variable overhead, okay, manufacture overhead, variable part. So per cup is $10, right? So if I don't change my material type, labor, inputs, so it will be $10 per cup. So that wouldn't change if I make 1 cup or 1,000 cup or 10,000. Okay, that's a constant. I'm saying the variable cost per unit. But looking for the the fixed cost per unit, like my overall, like a fixed overhead, or especially my fixed overhead, that's a downward, because the overhead, the total is a fixed. So when I increase my sales volume, my fixed overhead per unit, you can see is going down, okay, as I increase my volume. So for example, in the beginning, this here, when I have a smaller volume, my fixed cost per unit is very high. Maybe this is 11, right? So I only can produce a small volume of coffee cups. Then when I gradually increase my volume, the fixed expense per cup is got to decrease probably here is 5. So again, in the beginning, my total cost will be 10 plus 11 is 21, my average cost. And now it can drop down to 15 because this one is always, the variable is always 10, right? Then continue, if I continue, this will be probably $5. So 21, 15, and 12 average cost per cup, the coffee cups. And now if you bring it to the market, so which one you have more competitive cost and probably pricing that. So that's the economy of scale. And how I can use the economy of scale more, right? So given the your cost information, so your breakdown, I need to understand how much the variable cost and how much the fixed cost, so I can enjoy or take advantage of the economy of scales. Right, so like I'm just saying, there are lots of ways we can use the variable costing and the fixed costing to help the business and make informed decisions, okay, regarding the production and also pricing. So in this chapter, we focus on the, so first we need to use the historical data, right? So if you want to understand, like I'm saying, I want to understand my company's cost structure, how much of my cost is variable and how much is the fixed. So you need to analyze your historical data and put them into the modeling, right? So you can separate them into variable and fixed. So that's analyze and identify the cost behavior. So this is kind of the focus of chapter 6, because in reality, rather than you get the ideal variable cost or fixed cost, probably what you see is really a mass of the data, like random. So it's like a mass of the data. How we can sort out from the distribution of the historical data. For example, I develop a mixed cost, right? So separate the variable cost and the fixed cost, okay, from the overall, like the cost pools or data pools. Okay, so that's the techniques we are going to talk about in this chapter. Okay, how to analyze your historical data and use the techniques to separate, okay, and construct a reliable model so you can use the model to predict the future. And most commonly, we use a linear regression. So one cost driver, okay, that's probably you see the cost driver. I'm trying to analyze and why is my total cost, the purpose, okay, so, and A is normally your fixed cost total. So Y is the total cost. And A is your fixed cost. And X is the cost driver, for example, your sales volume or the mileage, okay, drive by the car. And B is your variable cost per unit, because the variable cost is varied with the volume of production. We couldn't give you a total, so it should be a variable like $5, like the one, the cup of the things. Okay, so I have a total, for example, $1,000 fixed, and then plus a $15. How much? Oh, 10. Okay. So $10 per cup. This will be my cost model for making the coffee cups. So How I got this model? I got the model from the historical data. Okay. So from my history, I found out I have 1,000 fixed cost. And then for each cup, there are variable cost of $10. So once you decide this is a model, then you can apply to the future, right? So you can plug in any units of the cups to make a prediction for the total cost. And then you can combine the cost information with revenue and other information to do analyze and make different decisions. So this is the simple we call one variable linear model. And sometimes, like if I use a ABC concept, right? So I have more than one cost drivers, and we can use a multivariant linear model. Okay, multivariant. Then in that case, I will have like X1, then X2, or even X3 is like a multiple variable regression. Okay, I believe you're familiar with this from your statistical classes. Right? But for mostly we use a one variable. Okay, like they call like a single variate, or you can use multivariate. Okay, that's the purpose. So let me skip this something because the time. For these cost behaviors, I'm not going to repeat because mostly we talk about already in chapter 2. Okay, so you can use these slides as additional review for like the charting of the behavior for the variable and fixed cost. And some costs are not really perfect or ideal, right? Like we have this they call step variable. It's not a straight line, but increasing quickly, okay, by narrow steps, okay, like a very steep step. Then you can treat it as a variable. Okay, for example, like the hourly wage in for example, in like the hourly wage or the wage, because you cannot really hire, for example, a half people, right? So you couldn't really have so labor normally 1%, 2%, 3%. You couldn't really have a 1.5, right? Like people. So it's more like a stage, right? So narrow stage. And the variable, okay, this is the per unit, okay, as we just mentioned. So I'm jumping to this. So in reality, what we observed, okay, especially think about your overhead, right? So manufacture overhead category or period cost, okay, your overall sales, general, and admin expenses. Most of them are not a real perfect variable cost or fixed cost. Their cost behavior we call mixed cost, or like you have like a semi-variable cost. And for this type of cost, if we want to use it in analysis, like in the cost structure, we have to break down them into a fixed portion and a variable portion. Okay, just like the linear equation I just wrote in the title. And they use a rental charge as an example here. For example, I rent equipment. Then you have a fixed rent, right? So I believe like if you rent a U-Haul, right? So I think probably like they charge, for example, the smallest, like 1995 as a fixed charge, right? And then you have the mileage charge as a variable portion. Right, I don't know, for maybe like a $2 like per mile, right? So like for example, something like that. Then the overall formula will be like, okay, the total cost for rental for renting the U-Haul will be the fixed cost plus the 2 per mileage, right? Then you can predict, okay, for if I'm like, or if equipment that may be like related to the running hours, right, or the machine hours. So that's like the way. And this can be a utility cost, right? You have a fixed charge and the usage charge. Okay, mostly you see the semi-variable or mixed cost. And then in reality, so how, if you see a mixed cost, okay, what are the common techniques to help us break down the mixed cost and construct a linear model? Okay. And historically, based upon different conditions, you can consider one of these. I would say the linear square regression is more popular because now we have all of the, even Excel, right? So Excel can perform simple linear square regressions. But when we introduce, we also cover all the other three, like it has been used. And still, I believe sometimes it's still used in the operations, because if you use least square or any of these three, you need to have historical data. You need to have historical data. You can use these three. How about if I'm making a new product or brand new service? I don't have historical data. So how I can know variable cost, fixed cost? Then you need to analyze the cost contents, right? So we call account classifications. So what are the required cost inputs for the new product or service? So I can identify which item is direct and indirect. Okay, we call engineer or account classification method. Okay, that's kind of for new products. And here, so cost estimates are based on a review of each account. So for example, the materials, labors, or then the different type of overhead, right? So variable or fixed and analyzed. And a zero fit, that's normally the scatter plot. We talk about in statistics. So you have the data point, or you have the distribution of the data point, and we simulate using the Excel or other, or even you can visually feed a linear line, right? So, but this one really varies, right? So if you see the visually, so each different people can generate different lines, okay, totally different. But the recommended approach, okay, when visually fit, is try to make sure you have the data points equally distributed. Because careful, okay, equally distributed above and below the line you are trying to simulate, okay, the relationship. So equally, so minimize the standard deviation. Okay, in another way, you can have so positive differences and negative. So minimize the standard deviations, make sure the data equally distributed, okay, above and below. And the blue one is something I draw, but this the red one, apparently you can tell the red one is better, right? So fits the data points better than the blue one I'm drawing. Okay. Or if you have another thing, okay, like this one, that's even skewed, right? And these days we can easily use the Excel, SPSS, or other like math, right? So lots of things can give you the scatter plot visualization choices. Okay, so that's like the other approach. And then the high-low method, or is a simplified approach. especially during the manual stage. Okay, we haven't really used the softwares. And for this one is a idea, so among the historical data, okay, so among all of the historical data, like this one we have here, you don't really use all of them to simulate a line. I pick a highest point and a lowest point of the data. I'm thinking it should be the highest cost and the lowest, highest activity and the lowest activity. Like for example, lower and higher. Okay, I'm picking two extreme data points, the largest one and the smallest one, the highest and the lowest. Then use these two data points to simulate a cost formula. And the procedure is really simple. Okay, it can be done by manually. Okay. So first you identify the differences between the cost and the cost driver. Okay, for this question, the cost driver is like the unit, but overall this should be any cost driver you identify related to the data you are trying to analyze. Okay. So in this case, the cost difference and then the unit, okay, cost driver difference. Because we are trying to first, we need to find the unit variable cost. Okay, like because this one tells us when the unit change from 5,000 to 9,000 and how much the cost will increase. And that will be a simple division problem. So you can see the information will be So you can see the cost is the difference. Okay, so the marginal, the difference. So for 4,000 units difference, the cost difference is 3,600. So we can find the first step is the variable cost per unit. Okay, 90 cents per unit. That's like the whatever the cost you are trying to analyze. So the high-low method, you first will find the variable cost. Then you plug in the variable cost per unit in any of the high or low level we're using, because the fixed cost equal to the total cost minus the total variable cost. So this is like the formula we talk about. This is the total. The total, fixed, and variable. After we know this, this is doing like, we know this is 0.9, and y is the total cost. The total cost, you have two levels, right? So either use the highest one or the lowest one. And then you have the units related. So we are trying to find out how much is the A, the fixed cost. So they move the items, and that's basically this formula come from. So the A equals to the total cost minus, so for example, I'm using the highest level, will be the 9,700 minus the total variable cost is 0.9 times the 9,000. Fixed cost equals to, okay, this is 8,100. Right, so how much? 81, 16. Yeah, that should be the fixed cost should be 1600. If you use the lowest point, you should get the same number, but you need to change the total cost and the volume accordingly. So yeah, explain the same thing as I'm doing here. And again, it's explain the way we're trying to do. And now finally, for more accurate historical, like we can use the least square regression, okay, running by the computers. Okay, so we can do this. So we can see this quickly, explain the components. And this is like a one variable analysis, or you might think I only have one cost drivers. Sometimes if you can identify so multiple regressions, okay, this will be more accurate, like we talk about in the ABC costing. In that case, you can expand the single variable regression to multiple regression by adding more variables in the model. But don't make this too complex. Or if you have, for example, 10 different cost drivers, you probably confuse yourself. So keep a reasonable, or two or more, but keep a reasonable number of cost drivers so you can balance the accuracy of the model and also the workload, okay, or complication of the model. Oh, this is this case. Because I just did, I'm thinking, yeah, I can share a real regression, which I did it for, we have a data analytic project, okay, for my accounting information system class. I believe I still have that uh, data and regression open, and even the scatter plot. Yes, I did it, still have it open. So let me stop this and share a real regression. So you can see the data sets I have. Okay, so I have this is I'm trying to find out a relationship between the advertisement inputs, okay, advertising expenses. So how the inputs of the advertisement related to the revenue change. And the advertisement explain the revenue change. Okay, it's not really a cost question, okay, but it's the same thing. I'm trying to analyzing the relationships between two groups of data. So advertising will be my independent variable. Okay, this is the cost driver, for example, and this is the result. Okay, so how my cost inputs will impact the total cost. And this is the data you can see. I don't really see any direct variable as a variable relationship or fixed cost. So I can use the scatter plot. This is come with Excel, and this is the scatter plot drafted. And all of the dots, okay, so on the y-axis is my revenue, and the x is the advertisement expense, like cost driver, annual cost, okay, data points. And they simulate a line, okay, like a scatter plot, 0 fit a line. So you can see. So we visually fit like a line, and this is your so in this part will be the fixed portion. and this is the variable portion. So like this. So we break down the relationship, okay, into the fixed is like the intercept, and then the variable portion. Okay. And this is the scatter plot, and I can run a regression. Okay, so if you can go to the home and go to your data, and you have the data analysis package, okay, you can run the linear regression from here. I already did it, so I just want to show you the result. So this is the linear regression for one variable. Okay. So how we can evaluate the model? Okay, I have a, you probably know the R square already, right? So R square is about 29%. So not very strong enough. Okay, so means the advertisement expense is not strong enough to explain all the variances for the revenue change. And my fixed, fixed portion is this one, okay, like 819,000 something. Okay. So imagine if you are doing a breaking down of the cost formula, this will be a fixed cost. This one. So fixed intercept. Then this will be the variable cost per expense, like, per dollar. So means, okay, per dollar of my advertisement can increase my revenue by $3.67 with that interpretation. So for this relationship, so each dollar of the advertisement can increase the sales by $3.67. I put it here, the formula. And but you do have a fixed revenue, okay, already here. So the data I'm analyzing here is not really a breaking down of a mixed cost, okay, is testing, finding the relationship. But this I'm focusing on the regression with the method with the tools. So when you have, for example, I have my two groups of data. Okay, this is my cost driver, right? So my cost driver, then this is my cost. So you can use the scatter plot and the regression similarly. So it will generate the cost formula, okay, or the cost breakdown. So you can use the evaluate the strong, like how strong the modeling, and can we use it for predicting the future cost or expenses. So the modeling you need to evaluate, okay, like related to the using the R square and standard errors, okay, to evaluate how likely and how strong the model you can use it for make predictions. Okay, I think that's almost for me for chapter 6. Oh, it's not really a hard chapter. Mostly some textbook, okay, they make this part as an appendix with the CVP analysis. Okay, but this one they separate into a chapter so we can prepare better. So when we move to chapter 7, we pretty much understand the cost behavior for variable costing, fixed costing, and where the data come from, okay, and how we have break down them, and then we can apply in different analysis like break even, target profit, like operating leverage, and the different special decisions. Okay, I think that's probably